Python is one of the key tools for data analysis, and today we are going to start learning Python from scratch. In the previous videos we have learned Excel, Power BI and SQL, and we left Python for the end of this 3 months data analyst roadmap because we are going to learn Python for 1 month. So Python is a general purpose programming language, but in this 3 months data analyst roadmap we will learn Python specifically for data analysis purposes. We'll start learning it from scratch and we'll keep learning more on Python till intermediate commands. After that we'll move on to the data analysis path and we'll use it for data analysis. First of all, we'll need Python software to be installed on our PC, and we'll need another tool for writing code and using Python for interpreting that code to our PC. We'll need to install Python on our PC first, and then we'll need a code editor to write code in Python. So without any further ado, let's begin. So first of all, we'll need to visit this page, that is www.python.org/downloads, to download Python on our PC. Here we can see this button that says download Python 3.12.1. If we click this button, it will download Python on our PC. I've already downloaded Python and I have placed the file on desktop that you can see. So for installing Python, let me double click this file and it says install now, but before that we need to check both of these check boxes, use admin privileges and add Python to path. After that we need to click install now and wait for a few seconds. It will install Python on our PC. As you can see, the installation wizard is installing Python on our PC. As you can see, it says setup was successful. It means Python has been installed on this computer. Let me click close. So congratulations, we have successfully installed Python on Windows machine. The second tool that we need is an editor where we can write code in Python. We can simply use any editor. That can be Sublime Text, that can be PyCharm, that can be a simple notepad file. But for writing code better and for understanding everything clearly and highlighting the code, we need to install an IDE. IDE means Integrated Development Environment, where we can write code efficiently and run it smoothly and easily. So for that I have chosen PyCharm, but not PyCharm Professional because it costs us money. So if we scroll down on this page, remember I will provide these links to you in the video description, so you can download these files if needed. We'll scroll down to PyCharm Community Edition and we can download the exe file. Underneath this you can see it's free and built on open source, so we can use this software for free, 100% free, and that will be free for lifetime. So let me click download. Once I click download, it will be downloaded to our computer, and after that we can install it by just clicking next that we saw before for Python installation as well. So once you download this and install it on your PC, then you can open it from the Windows button. If I click this and write PyCharm, because I've already downloaded and installed PyCharm on my PC, so it's giving me the PyCharm Community Edition option. When you install it on your PC, you will also be able to see this PyCharm Community Edition. Click on this and it will be opened in a few seconds. When you open PyCharm for the first time, you will see the home page here. I'm not seeing this because I've used PyCharm before. This is not the first time. So for creating a new project, we need to click on this file menu and click new project. When you click new project, this window will pop up. As you can see that it has selected the python.exe that we installed before, and it is the base interpreter. If it is not selected, then you can click on this 3 dots and then you can select the python.exe path where you have installed Python. So because it's already selected, I will not change it. Here on top we can select the project location and provide the name to our first project. So I can say first project in Python. We will leave everything as it is and we'll select create. Click this window. Once we create new project, it will create main.py file for us and it will provide us a base script. So this is the base script that is provided to us. Let me click this red button. This is not needed here, and let me delete everything because we are starting this from scratch. On the left side in the project folder, you can see first project in Python. That is the name that we selected for our new project. And in here we can see main.py file. Main.py file is the first file which will run in this project, and we will write all our code here in this file. Currently we do not have anything here, but we will start writing our code very soon. So that's it. We needed only these two softwares to install on our PC to start learning Python. Now that we have installed both tools, now we can start learning Python from scratch. The first thing that I want you to learn is printing messages to the console. Programming language is a language where we write code and it interprets the code to the computer. So we tell our computer what to do. For example, I can tell my computer to print something on the screen, or I can tell my computer to build a software to connect to a database, to select data, to analyze data, and everything. So for all those things to do, we first need to learn the basics of Python. So the first thing that we are going to learn is the print statement, which is used for printing messages to the console. So let me write our first statement, that is print, and print is a function. Whenever I write print, you can see that this PyCharm is helping me complete this statement, and it is giving me suggestion that do you want to use the print function of Python, and it says that this is a built-in function that you are going to use. It shows that we need to open this parentheses, provide values, separators, and everything, and then close parentheses. This means that this PyCharm is actually helping us write our code easily. So for writing a function, we need to open parentheses and close parentheses. Currently this print function does not have anything, and it will not print anything. If I run this file, you can see that it says process finished with exit code 0. It means the program ran successfully without any error, but it did nothing. We can see that there is nothing here. So for printing messages, I will need to provide something to this print function so it can print it for us. If I want to print a number like 10, I will provide it 10. If I run this again, you can see that it is printing 10. If I provided another number like 10.4 and I run it again, it says it's 10.4. If I provided a message, for example, I say hello world, it will give me an error. Let me run this. It gives an error. Why? Because whenever we want to print a text, we need to enclose the text in double quotes from the beginning and double quotes at the end. So whenever we provide a number to the print function, we do not need to enclose that in double quotes, but whenever we provide a text to the print function, we need to enclose the text in double quotes. So let me enclose this text in double quotes, and whenever I enclose this text in double quotes, you can see that there is no error. And if I run this again, this will print this message to the console. Congratulations, we have printed the first message onto the console. So we use print function for printing almost anything to the console. Now you learned that whenever we want to print a message or a text, we need to enclose it in double quotes. Why? Because a series of characters in a programming language is called a string or a text, but we call it string normally. Everyone calls it a string because the programming language itself calls it a string. Later on, when we move on to the data types, you will understand that there are several types of data types. Basically, we understand 4 of them for this video. One is integer, that is a whole number like 5, 10, 100, -10, -20, like that. There is no floating point in between. So that is a complete number. That's called integer. The next data type is a floating point number that we saw before. It was 1.2, 10.5, -3.2, like that. If it has a floating point, we call it a float data type. If it is a whole number, we call it integer. If it is a text, a single character or a series of characters, we call it a string. And there is one more data type, that is true or false, and that's called boolean or bool. So boolean is holding only one of the 2 values, that is true or false. So remember, there are 4 data types that we will be using in these first lectures of Python. So currently you understood that we are enclosing a series of characters called a string in double quotes. Most of the times we programmers, when we write code, we make mistakes. So there is nothing to worry about if you make errors. That's normal. Everyone from the senior most programmer to the junior most programmer make mistakes. If you are in the initial stage of writing code, do not worry. For example, if I'm a programmer, I may miss this last double quotes. So this PyCharm is actually helping me understand that there is an issue. The first hint it is giving me is a red line underneath this hello world. This red line indicates that there is an error, and if I hover over this red line, it says missing closing quote. It actually tells me that I'm missing the closing quote and I need to add a closing quote to this print functions text message, and whenever I provide that, the error will be removed. So if you make mistakes or errors, that doesn't matter. If you understand it right here, you can correct it, and if you don't understand it right here, you can copy the error message, go to Google, search for the solution of that error, and there will be many websites, many people helping you give you answer to that error message. So now that we have printed this first print statement, we can add as many print statements as we want. For example, if I copy this and add it 2 more times, total 3 times, then if I run this, it will print the hello world 3 times in different lines like this. You can see in the output. So I can do this. I can write as many print statements as I want. That's not a problem, but I can write the same code in one print statement as well. For example, if I write hello world, then I move to another line, write hello world again, and I move to the third line and write hello world for the third time. I can do that in one print statement as well. There is a special character \n, and that's a new line character. Whenever we provide \n, it will break the line in the output and will go to the new line. If I write hello world again and \n, hello world again, and if I run this program, it will give me the same output. We have 3 times hello world, and we wrote this in one print statement with the help of a new line character. So we can do that. There is another thing. If I want to print a same message different times in Python, we can do that very easily. For example, I want to print hello world and break the line, and I want to do this 5 times. So what I can do is to close this string and add multiplication operator and write 5. It means that I want to print this entire thing in the double quotes 5 times. If I run this, it will write hello world to the console 5 times. So we can do that as well. We can use a multiplication operator to print one message many times. Sometimes we will have different strings and we will need to merge them together and make it one message and print it to the console. We can do that. We can concatenate different strings to one string and print it onto the console. For example, if we have hello world and welcome to the Python, if we have 2 messages or 2 strings, we can concatenate them by the use of a plus operator. So let's do that. Hello world, let me give it a space and then add plus sign and add another string. Welcome to Python. If I run this, it will join or concatenate both of the messages, hello world space and welcome to Python. So it joined or concatenated both of them and made it one message and printed it to the console. Later on, we will need this to combine multiple strings. So we need to learn this. We use the plus operator to combine multiple strings. And remember, we cannot do it only for 2 strings. We can do it for as many strings as we want. So if we have 5 strings, we can concatenate them with the use of the plus operator. For example, I can add another plus. Let me add a space, then another plus, and add another message. This is our first lesson. If I run this again, all the strings will be concatenated and printed to the console. So we can use the plus operator to concatenate different strings. Now that we have learned how to print output to the console, sometimes we will need to get input from the user. For example, if we have a database and we are doing the data entry, we will ask the user to provide input. For example, the first name of the person, the last name of the person, the age, the score, the height, the weight, everything. Anything needed we will get from the user. So for that we need to use another function, and that function is called input. Input function is used for getting input from the user. As we used print function for printing anything to the console, we use input function for getting input from the user. And syntax is the same. We write input, open parentheses and close parentheses. Let me run this. You will see that the program started, but it is not ending. Remember, there is no program processed and exit with code 0. There is no that message. It means the program is waiting for our input. If I click here, the cursor is blinking and it is actually asking for an input, and we can provide an input. For example, let me provide 10 and press enter. When I do that, the program finishes and it says process finished with exit code 0. So we use input function for getting input, but this is not the right way of getting input. For getting input, we need to provide a simple message that what we want. If we want age, we need to write it there. If we want name, we need to write it there. So we can say that enter your full name. This is the message. Now if I run this again, this will print this message, and if I click here, the program is not ending until it receives the input from the user. So if I say that my name is John Smith, and if I press enter, remember it gets this input and then program finishes. As you can see, we got input from the user here, but we did nothing with that. We just got the name from the user and the program finished. If we want to print that again to the console, we can get help of the print function here. As you saw before, when this program runs, this input function is replaced with this name, and the name is given back to the program, but we are not doing anything with that. To print that, we can enclose this input function in the print function like this. Let me give it spaces so you can see it clearly. Remember, this input function is another function and it is enclosed inside the parentheses of print function. When I run the program, what it does, first of all, it executes this input function and it asks for the user input. Once the user provides an input, for example, instead of this input function, user provides a name like John or Anna or anything. Let me provide it John. When user provides John, John is given to this program like this. The input function is actually replaced with the user input like this, and then that user input is given to the print function, and print function prints it to the console. So let's execute this and see it in action. Let me run this program. Remember, it first executes this input function and it says that enter your full name. If I click here, the cursor is blinking and it is asking for an input. Let me write Anna James. Now if I press enter, this Anna James will be given to the print function and print function will print it here. Let me press enter and it is printed. You can see Anna James is received by the program and printed by the print function. Now what we can do here is to get the Anna James from the input function and concatenate it with another message, because we saw before that we concatenate strings together. So here we can do something like this. In the print function, I can add a string like welcome, and then I can add a plus sign to concatenate the input received from the input function with this welcome. So instead of Anna James, we can say welcome Anna James. Let me run the program again. This time again it says enter your full name. Let me give it a name, for example, Stephen Lee. If I press enter, the Stephen Lee input is given to this print function. This input function will be replaced by Stephen Lee like this. and these two strings will be concatenated by the print function and will be printed onto the console, and we will see the message here, welcome Stephen Lee. I hope you have gotten the point. This is a very basic program that we are writing because we are starting from scratch, but later on these programs are getting bigger and bigger, and we need to provide explanation to our code. So whenever we see this program later on, we must understand this. We programmers forget things easily, so we need to explain our code to ourselves and to other programmers. When the programs get bigger, there are many people working on the same project, so everyone needs to understand everyone else's code. So for that, we need to provide explanation to our code, and for providing explanation, we add comments. We explain everything inside comments. Every programming language supports comments. What is a comment? Comment is an explanation of the code that is ignored by the interpreter, that is not executed as a code. For example, if I add a comment is added by adding this hash or pound sign and then writing the explanation. For example, this below program gets input from the user and prints it to the console. This is a basic explanation. Remember that the color of this statement is gray because we have added a hash sign or pound sign at the beginning of the line. We are telling the Python interpreter that this is a comment, not a code. This needs not to be executed because this is a comment and this is not the actual code. If I remove this print statement, let me remove this and run the program. Remember, there will be nothing. The process finished with exit code 0. There is nothing because this statement is ignored by the Python interpreter because it understands that this is a comment and not a code. So we can add comments for explaining our code. Let me bring back the print function. So if I write this program and I run it again, the first statement is ignored because that's a comment and program is executed from this input function. So provide a name, John, and welcome John. That's it. So far we have seen two functions of Python. One was print function for printing output and another was input function for getting input. There are hundreds of functions in Python that we will be learning step by step whenever they are needed. For now, let's learn the third function of Python, that is called len function, and we use len function for getting the length of a string. For example, if we have a string like welcome to Python and I want to understand the length of the string, I want to understand how many characters are in this string, we use the len function. So I need to enclose this entire text in the len function, and if I print this output of this len function, it will give me the length of this string. So if I run this, it says 17. It means there are 17 characters in this string welcome to Python, and there are 17 characters. First of all, the len function is executed. It gets the number of characters from this string, returns these characters like 17 and gives the 17 to print function, and print function prints 17 to the console. Now that we understand input function, print function and len function, let's write a simple program. Let me add a comment and say write a program that inputs the name from the user and writes the length of the name to the console. So what we need to do is to get input from the user and then get the length of that input and then print it to the console. So the first thing we need to do is to get input. So let me write input function and say enter your full name. This will get the full name. Once this input function is executed, it will get the input from the user. User will enter their name. Once the input is gotten from the user, we need to provide that input to the len function to get the length of that name. So we can enclose that input function within len function. It will get the length of this string or the name from the user, and then we'll provide it back to the program. Now what we need to do is to get that length and provide it to the print function, so print function can print it to the console. So we can enclose that length within print. We can run this, it will work just fine, but we need to provide some good messages later on so user can understand what's going on. If I run this, remember the input function runs first here. Let me provide it an input like John Smith. If I press enter, it just prints 10. User does not understand what this 10 means. So let's go to this print function and add a string like your name contains plus length characters. If I run this, it again asks for the input. Let me say John Smith again, but this time if I run this, it gives me an error, and the error message says that can only concatenate str, not int to str. This means that we are concatenating a string to an integer. I told you before that there are different data types. One is a string, another is integer, the third one is float, and the fourth one is boolean. Here what the input function does, it receives the input from the user and it gives the length of that input, and that length is actually an integer number like 10, 5, 20 or so. So here we cannot concatenate that integer with this string. Here we have string, at the end again we have string, but in the middle we have an integer number. So basically this says that there is a type error. Type error means the data types are not matching. String cannot be concatenated with integer. So this is basically the error, and we need to resolve that. For resolving this issue, we need to convert this integer to the string because we want to concatenate them, so we need to convert that. And there is another function here that we can use to convert an integer to a string, and that function is str. So if I provide this length to the str function, for example this length is returning 10 as we saw before, that 10 will be enclosed in double quotes and that will be converted to string. After that we can combine them and we can concatenate it with other strings. If I run this again, it asks for the username and I can say again John Smith. If I press enter, this time this John Smith is passed to this length function. Length function calculates the length of this John Smith, which is 10. Then this 10 is provided to the str function here. Str function converts that 10 to a string, and for example if we had 10 like this, after giving it to str function will convert it to a 10 like this. It will basically enclose it in double quotes, and then after this execution this entire statement of str will be a string of value 10. And now we have 3 strings and those can be concatenated simply and printed out to the console. So this is what happens here. We will see later on how to convert integer to string, string to integer, float to integer, integer to float, and everything. We will see this a little bit later in this video. Another key concept in programming is variables, and variables is one of the most used and necessary topics that we need to learn. Variable is actually a container in the memory location where we can store something. For example, we can get the name of the user and we can store it somewhere in the memory so we can use it later on. Similarly, we can get the age of a user and we can store it in a variable or a container in the memory, and we can use that later on. So variable is nothing but a container, and we can use that container to store our data. So for example here what we do, we get the input from the user, then we give that input to the length function, and we give that input again to the str function, and then from str we give it to print function. We can simplify the statement and we can divide it into different lines by the use of variables. For example, what I can do is I will leave that print statement there so you can see. I can get the name of the user and I can add it to this name variable. Again, variable is a container, so I am getting this input. Let me copy this from here. When user provides input by the use of this input function, that input will be assigned to this name variable. In the middle, you can see this equal operator. In the programming language, this is not the same as we have in math. Whenever there is one equal sign that you see on my screen, that is not an equal operator. That is actually assignment operator. What it does, it gets the value from the right side and assigns it to the left side variable. So here this input function gets input from the user. For example, John. Now whenever user gives John, that John is assigned to this name variable. Before this assignment, name variable contains nothing, but after this John is added to this name container. So after this statement, name container will have the value of John. So variables are containers that hold data. So let me replace this back with input. After this, what we can do is to provide this name to the length function. Because we are storing the value of the input function in the name variable, now what we can do is to declare another variable, length, or I can say name length, and I can use the length function, provide it name, and this length function will get the length of this name, which is a value received from the input function, and will give this length function to this name length variable. That length will be assigned to the name length variable. So now we have two containers. One container is name that holds the name of the user. Another container is name length that holds the length of the name variable. After this, when we get the length of the name, we need to convert it to string. So what we can say that str length or string length, we can convert this name length to string, and then we can assign that to string length variable, and at the end we can use this print function and we can replace this entire statement with this str length. So what I can do is to write str length and it will be executed perfectly. So what we did, first of all, we are receiving input from the user and we are assigning that input to the name container or name variable. Then because here it holds the value, for example, user provides something like John Smith, or let me say John. This John, let me enclose this in double quotes, this John will be assigned to name. It means we will have a box in the memory location where John will be stored. So this name variable contains John. Now we are using this length function to get the length of this name variable, and name variable contains John. So John has 4 characters, JOHN. This name will be replaced by John like this. Let me remove this, and here it will be given as John. Length function will get the length of John, which is 4, and it will assign that 4 to this name length variable. So now name length variable is another box in the memory location that contains 4 now, because 4 is the length of John. After that, we are replacing this name length with 4 because it holds the value of 4 like this. str will convert 4 to a string 4 like this. It will enclose it in double quotes. It will be a string 4, and this string 4 will be assigned to string length. str length is another container. We can name it anything basically, but for being it a meaningful name, I named it str_length. I can say a or b or anything, but it's good to use meaningful names for variables. So we are converting this 4 to str4 and we are storing it in str length. So finally we have this one, and at the end in the print statement, this str length will be replaced by this 4 like this, and this will be printed to the console. So this is the execution of these statements. Basically you need to understand what variable is. Variable is again a container that stores our data. That's it. It can store all the data types, string, numbers, booleans, everything. So let me replace these by their own values. Let me say here we have name, Here we have name length, and here we have str length. Let's run this program again. Again, the first statement is the input function. So if I provide it Anna James, press enter, your name contains 10 characters. So what happened, Anna James was stored in name variable, then it was given to length function calculated the number of characters, it was 10, and that 10 was assigned to name length. Then name length was assigned to str to convert it to a string, and str length stores that string version of that name length, and then we are using str length in the print function to print it here to the console like this. Now that we understood variable and assignment operator, the question arises that how we can name a variable. Can we give it any type of name? Are there any specific rules for naming variables? Yes, there are. We cannot give any name to a variable. For example, I cannot say one name and I can assign it, for example, John. This is an error. We cannot start the variable name by a digit or a number. So the variable name should start either with an alphabet or an underscore. This is the rule. Variable names should start with either an underscore or an alphabet. At the middle, we can give it any digits, or at the end also we can give it any digits. That's not a problem. But remember, your variable names must be meaningful. So later on you can understand that what this variable is actually holding. If we name it like underscore NA3ME5, it's not meaningful and no one will understand this. As I said before, that later on when the programs get bigger, we need to understand all of our code and our code should be readable. So for that we need to use proper naming and we need to use proper variable. Whenever we have multiple words in a variable, we need to split them with an underscore. If we do not split them with an underscore, that will not create any issue, but again the issue of readability will be there. So we need to split them with an underscore. For example, you saw before that I named this str name underscore length. If I have a variable like user password, I can write it like this, user password, but that is not readable. So what I need to do is to name it like this, user underscore password. Similarly, if I have a variable like first name, I should write it like this, first underscore name, last underscore name, my underscore computer, like this. So we need to split them with an underscore. Even if there are 10 words in a variable, we need to split them with underscores. That's it. So these are the rules for naming variables. Remember, without the underscore, there is no any other special character allowed for using them in the variable names. That's another rule as well. We cannot say my computer %, and we say that this is John. There will always be an issue. Let me remove all of this and we still have an error message. If I hover over this, it says cannot assign to operator. It means we are using this % operator. We need to remove this and the error will be gone. So the only special character that we can use in variable names is an underscore. Before in this video, I told you that there are 4 main primitive data types that we can use in Python. One was integer, another was string, the third one was float, and the fourth one was boolean. We use these data types for storing different types of data. For example, we use whole numbers for storing IDs like amounts and everything. We also use float data types for storing currencies like amount of money and so on. We use string data type for storing string data like names, like emails and everything else that is a text-based data. So we use string data type for storing those values. And similarly, we use boolean data type for storing true or false values. So we can use either true or false in the boolean data type. Let's use all of them in one program so we can understand. For example, I can say that the name of a person is John Smith. It is a string data type, so we are using this string and assigning this to name variable. We know that this is a string data, that's why we are enclosing this in double quotes and we are assigning it to name variable. Similarly, if we have age, for example, age 25, this is an integer data, 25 is an integer. We can say height For example, it can be 1.8 meters, and for example we can say is graduated, and we can say true or false, he's graduated, like this. So we are using all these 4 data types and we are storing these values to different variables. Let me print all of them. If I say that print name, comma, age, comma, height, comma, is graduated, and if I run this program, all of them will be printed to the console. Name is printed first because we provided this first to the print function. Then the age is printed, then we have 1.8, which is the height, and then we have true. Now I want to know the type of each variable. I want to know what data type of data this variable is holding or storing. So what I need to do is to use another function in Python, that is the type function. We can use type function for understanding the data type of a data. So let me write type. This is a function and I can provide it any variable. For example, first of all, I want to print the type of name. If I run this program, it will print the data type of name and it says that this is str. So str basically stands for string. So the name variable is holding string. That's why the type is returning as str. We can provide it the age variable and this time it will return integer. It says int. So similarly, if we give it height, it will give us float. If we provide it is graduated, it will give us boolean or bool. It will simply say bool, and that means boolean data type. So we use the type function for checking the type of a variable. And we not only use type for variables, but we can simply use it for any simple data as well. For example, I can provide it a message like welcome, and if I run this, it will say that welcome is a string. Sometimes you will need to change the type of a data to another type, so we can basically use it in our program. Before you saw that we converted an integer data to a string by the use of str function. As we can convert integers to strings, we can convert strings to integers as well, and we can convert basically any data type to another data type if that is able to be converted. For example, we can convert float to integer, we can convert integer to float. Similarly, we can convert string to integer and float, and we can convert integer and float to string as well. How we do it? There are different functions for doing that. Remember that in the type conversion there are 2 types of type conversion. One is called implicit, which Python does by itself, and another is explicit, that we need to do that. For example, in the implicit conversion, if we say that I have a variable like a and I do a calculation, basic calculation like 10 divided by 5, if I print this, remember that this 10 is an integer value, 5 is also an integer value. I'm dividing 10 by 5, which will be 2, and that will also be an integer. But the rule in Python is that the result of a division operation is converted by default to a float value. Let's see this in action. If I run this, remember it gives me 2.0, not 2 only. So 2.0 is actually a float data. And if I check the type of this a variable with the help of the type function, it will say that this is a float data. Let me run this, and it says that this is float, not integer. So this is called implicit conversion. Python itself converts an integer data to float in the division operation. Another type of conversion is called the explicit conversion, and we need to do that by ourselves. For example, if there is a number a is equal to 10, and if I want to print this, print the value is plus a. If I run this, we saw before that it's giving us an error because a is an integer type and we cannot use it with string. So what we need to do is to explicitly convert the data type of integer to string, and we can use the string function str to convert this integer to string first and then concatenate it with this string message. If I run this, it says the value is 10. So this time it does not give us any error. So this is called explicit conversion, and we have seen this before as well. Similarly, we can convert string to integer as well. For example, if we have a program where we are getting any input from the user and we are doing some calculations on that, we need to convert that string input to the integer for calculation. Let's see an example. For example, we are getting the food price which we ordered from the restaurant. Food price is equal to input. We are getting this as an input. Enter the food price here. User will input the food actual price here. Now we need to ask for the delivery cost. So you can say delivery cost is equal to input. Enter the delivery cost here. User will be able to enter two values, one for the food price, another for delivery cost. Now we need to add both of them. Let's add both of them and assign it to another variable. Total is equal to food price plus delivery cost. And now we need to print this. Print the total bill is plus total. If I run this program, it will give us a problem. Let's run this and see what happens. So first it asks for the food price because it's the first input statement. Let me give it 100. Press enter. Enter the delivery cost. Let me say it's 15. And if I press enter, the total bill is 115. This is a problem. What happened here? It is getting the first input as a string. So if the user provides like 100, that 100 is actually a string 100 like this. Remember that input function always returns the input as a string. So it returns this 100 as a string 100 like this. And the same thing happens with the delivery cost. So it gets the input 15 from the user and it returns it as a string. And here, because we are adding both of them, it is actually concatenating these two strings. So what happened here? It concatenated the 100 with this 15, and at the end it returned 115. So it returned something like this, which is not making sense. So what we need to do here is to convert the string that we get from the user to an integer. And that should be a value that is able to be converted to an integer. Because if that's a simple message and not an integer value, that cannot be converted to an integer data. So if this is 100 enclosed in double quotes, which is a string, and we see that 100 is an integer, so we can convert that. And we can convert that by the use of the int function. So what we need to do is to convert that like this. I can say int food price. Integer food price is equal to int food price. I am providing this food price to the int function. Int function will convert it to integer, and that will become a simple 100 like this without the double quotes. So in int food price, we will have integer version of the food price, and we are explicitly converting that string to integer with the help of the int function. We can do the same thing with delivery cost. So I can say int delivery cost is equal to int function and delivery cost. So what happens, it converts that 15 to an integer 15 like this, and it assigns that to integer delivery cost. And instead of concatenating both of them, what we need to do is to write int underscore food price plus int delivery price. And now we will be able to print this, but still we have some problems. Let me run this. Let's provide it 100, 15, and there is an error. The error again happens from this total, because now total is storing an integer value, so it cannot concatenate this integer with this string. So again we need to explicitly convert that total from integer to str and then concatenate it with this print. If I run this for the final time, this time everything will be okay. And that's it. Now we have 115 instead of 10015. So we use these explicit conversions to convert our data to another data type. We can do the same thing with float function and the bool function to convert anything from one type to another. Now that we have learned the basics of Python programming language, it's time for you to write some code. So I'm giving you a program. You need to write a program to get the first name from the user and the last name from the user, and then concatenate both first name and last name and print the full name to the screen. Remember, you need to use input function, print function, and variables. So this is a very basic thing. Let me write it on the screen as well so you remember. Write a program to get the first and last name from the user and print the full name to the console. So you need to write this and run this program so you can understand. Remember that you cannot learn anything without practicing. So you need to practice a lot to learn programming languages, especially Python. If you are getting value from this video, make sure you like this video, leave your comment in the comment section, share this video with your friends, and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.